Well, good morning, everyone. It's Pastor Jeremiah here, and I just want to welcome you to our online service. Thanks for tuning in this morning and being with us as we continue through this sermon series in Daniel. Well, it is fall. Fall is certainly here weather-wise because it's gotten a lot colder. I don't know if you've noticed this, but at night, a little bit cool. There's a mist. There's a dew in the morning, and I'm wearing my flannel. We turned the heat on for the first time in our house, and man, I'm just looking forward to it. I love that transition into fall, and it's clearly beginning. And I love seasons. I love seasons of life, and there's seasons of church life. And so here at Westside, definitely things kind of kick into gear here in the fall, and we are looking forward to this new season and all that it brings. We have some groups that are getting started, some Bible studies. There's a Bible study for women, Bible studies for guys. There's different groups that you can get plugged in and be a part of, and we would love to have you jump in. So reach out, let us know if we can help you connect in one of those ways through those groups. We also have some exciting things that we're going to be planning. Obviously, with everything that's going on with the pandemic, we're trying to be careful about what we do and don't do as far as gatherings go, and making sure that we're providing environments that are safe and reasonable for people. And so it's complicated, but we're moving forward with all of that, and by God's good grace, we'll get through this season healthy and whole. So we have a great service planned for you this morning. Garth is going to lead us in a time of worship, just inviting the presence of God. Such a critical time for us. Just recalibrate, reset, get our minds right, get our spirits in that place where we can really hear from God and be impacted by the truth from His Word. And so we are going to be teaching on the other side of worship out of Daniel. Looking forward to that. But let's worship together this morning.
Your love's making all things new. You're working it all for good. For the things of this world, there is hope renewed in the life that is found in you. You make all things new. You make all things new. Yesterday and forever, your love never changing, this hope never failing. Hallelujah. Faith isn't defense. Know your name is my last amen. It carries me when I cannot stand. It reaches me when I reach the end. Jesus, your name, when the whole world shakes. Jesus, your name, I will ever praise. My battle cry, every night and day, I'll sing your name over everything. I'll sing your name over everything. Oh, your name is my greatest strength. It fights for me and it won't relent. I cast my cares, every burden fall. For there's one name that can bear them all. Jesus, your name, when the whole world shakes. Jesus, your name, I will ever praise. My battle cry, every night and day, I'll sing your name over everything. I'll sing your name over everything. Oh, I'll sing your name over everything. I'll sing your name over everything. In every storm, you're the Prince of Peace, the Lord of all. You are heaven's King. I'll sing your name till my last breath here. Then I'll sing again with my first breath there. Jesus, your name, when the whole world shakes. Jesus, your name, I will ever praise. My battle cry, every night and day, I'll sing your name over everything. Oh yes, I'll sing your name over everything. Jesus, I'll sing your name over everything. My God, I'll sing your name over everything.
Well, thank you so much for worshiping with us this morning. Always great to give ourselves over to that experience. And just like I was saying earlier, recalibrating, getting our hearts right and being in the presence of Jesus. So, as I mentioned, we're in this sermon series through Daniel. It's been a really rewarding journey as we've taken a look at this amazing man of God and his incredible life. And today we're going to pick up on what is perhaps the key theme to this entire story, and that, of course, is signified here by this lion on the graphic, because we're going to be taking a look at this famous story, Daniel in the Lion's Den, or at least that's how it's been titled. Probably the most memorable story in maybe even in the Bible. But, you know, it's one of those stories that has intrigued people for generations, and it's got all the qualities of a great storyline, right? It's got the hero, who is Daniel. It's got the jealous coworkers who try to take him out, right? The plot to take him out. And then they've got big cats, right? I mean, who doesn't love some big cats? A miraculous escape and then revenge, right? They get what they deserve, those guys that tried to take him out. So what's not to like about this story? And of course, I think the big cats are the headliner. There's something about big cats that just get people's attention. And in case in point, I think proof of this is during the pandemic, I, along with millions of other people, tuned into this show on Netflix. You may have remembered it. It became really popular about just over a year ago. A crazy story about a guy who runs, Big Cat Zoo. And it's really a story about a lot of people who are obsessed with big cats. And there's something about that story that was just so compelling to people. And there's a lot of crazy things certainly within the story, but this idea of people and their obsession with big cats and living with big cats and snuggling up to big cats, it's this train wreck of a story, and yet still captured people's attention and got millions of people to tune in. And so there's something about big cats. That's my theory in ways that's very compelling. But fortunately, the story Daniel is not quite as psychotic as the Tiger King. Nevertheless, it's this great story. Now, I'll get this guy off the screen. Now, the temptation is to think that, okay, well, I've heard this story before. It's been taught countless of times to me in VBS and children's church and all these kinds of things growing up. It's a story we love to tell the kids, right? It's a Veggie Tales movie. If you don't know what Veggie Tales is, just YouTube it or something. You'll get the gist of it real quick. But it's been commercialized, is the point. This Daniel and the Lion's Den story has been commercialized, and it's just been overtold, and it's really tempting in that kind of situation, right, to just kind of glaze over it. And that's a mistake. That's what we ought not to do. And I think, kind of reading it again with fresh eyes and kind of leaning into this story this week has caused me to come up with a, really surprising truth in this story. And the key principle, I think, in this story is not, that night that Daniel got thrown in the lion's den and didn't get eaten, right? The key story is this principle that was a guiding force in Daniel's life. Because the truth is, there's a lot of skeptical people who could explain away that miraculous fact that Daniel escaped the mouths of hungry lions. Perhaps Daniel was an animal whisperer, right? He knew how to scratch the cats in the right place. He knew how to survive a difficult situation like this. He didn't stress out or go crazy like a normal person would. Maybe he had mad, rock climbing skills and was able to climb and escape the mouths of these hungry lions. But the story, again, of Daniel's rescue from the lions isn't the feature. The feature of this story is that Daniel's integrity once again guides him in his life. Daniel's integrity guides him. His uncompromising integrity, his devotion, his commitment to God, and his unwavering faith is the powerful takeaway once again in this story. Now, Daniel, at this point in time, has become a very old man. He was taken into captivity by the Babylonians when he was just 14 years old, as we mentioned in the first week. He rose quickly through the ranks of Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom to become a leader. He also served Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. But here we're introduced to a new king, and quite abruptly in the storyline, if you're reading it and like, hey, wait a minute, what happened here? Darius, the Persian, the king of kings, is in charge now of the Persian kingdom. And he recognizes Daniel for all of his skills and wisdom as well, and places Daniel in a leadership role. Darius was something of an administrative genius. He had established 120 satraps, they were called, leaders, to be rulers over various areas of his kingdom. And over those 120 satraps, he set 3 administrators. Daniel was one of those administrators who stood head and shoulders above the rest of them. And that is, again, where this story picks up. Why was Daniel able to elevate himself and distance himself from those who were his contemporaries, those who were, his peers? He was uncompromising. Right, we looked at this for the first week, the dietary restrictions that he was not willing to compromise on, even a small thing to a young man, and yet the decision that he made was uncompromising. He was able to, with wisdom, handle high-pressure situations. right? Even at the threat of death, he was able with wisdom to discern what needed to be done. He had the courage to speak the truth, a theme that we looked at last week. And then this week, his integrity continues to guide him throughout the course of his life. And so let's take a look at this story where it picks up in Daniel chapter 6, not Mr. Tiger King again. Daniel 6, verse 1. Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high officer to rule over each province. The king also chose Daniel and 2 others as administrators to supervise the high offices and protect the king's interests. Okay, so here we see some of Darius's, some of his administrative abilities at work in the way he organizes his kingdom. This is that Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers because of Daniel's great ability. The king made plans to place him over the entire empire, right? So big promotion that is coming Daniel's way. And something that we see regularly in Daniel's life. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. And this is a big issue because we live in a cancel culture society these days. We know that you could dig up dirt on just about anybody, and there's plenty of dirt to dig up, and you can cancel them. Right? It's this wonderful weapon that people use against others. And, there's all sorts of things that go along with that. They couldn't find anything with which to criticize or to bring down Daniel because of his integrity. But here's an important truth, and I think something that is important for us to remember, a key theme in this story, in particular in Daniel chapter 6. When God raises you up, which clearly God did throughout Daniel's career, others will want to tear you down. Others will want to tear you down. And I know this sounds overly cynical. We want to paint a broad brush on society of being so cynical about people, but it's just a pattern that you will often see in life. And it's true because most of us are highly susceptible to the sin of jealousy. We see other people elevated, and we think, well, why not me? Why not us? And we feel jealous and we want to tear that other person down as a way of kind of bringing them down to the level of everybody else so that we could all feel good about ourselves. And that's just kind of the nature of human nature. I remember when I was a kid, I was at a basketball camp called NBC Camps, and there was this competition, and all the coaches, grabbed this one kid who was very good. He was very skilled. He's all fancy in his dribbling, and he clearly had put in a lot of work. It was a very skilled basketball player, and they kind of were recognizing him and giving him credit for all these ways that he was doing things and doing the drills, and they kind of set him up on this pedestal, like this is the A+ camper. And I remember just feeling so jealous, right? And so angry that this kid got recognized because I thought, that I was pretty good, and why shouldn't they recognize me? And so we got into this competition. It was kind of like a one-on-one thing, and he was, again, really fancy with his dribbling and very good, with that kind of a thing, all the skills. And so I guarded him really close, and I made sure that he couldn't shoot. And then whenever he would get by me, in this particular game, there were no real penalties for fouling. I would just hack the living daylights out of him, in basketball term, for just foul him so badly. And it was frustrating for him, right? But I was just doing it to spite him because I so wanted him to lose. I think he ended up winning anyways. But still, the point is, my jealousy, right, was just trying to grab this guy and bring him down. We have a phrase that we like to use to describe this kind of scenario. It's the crab pot scenario, right? You put a bunch of crabs in a pot. They actually have the ability to get out of the pot, but the minute that one crab decides he's going to make a break for it, right, he's going to escape the pot, the rest of the crabs grab him and pull him down, back down with the rest of them, right? Because, well, if we're all going to be in here, we're going to be in here together, I guess is the idea. All I can say is that if you get promoted, if you get recognized, or you have major blessings, come into your life, you can expect that not everyone in your life is going to be happy for you. God bless the people that are. They're your true friends because they can overcome that feeling of jealousy and love you and appreciate what has come your way anyways. But the point is that in seasons of advancement, don't be surprised if people take shots at you, right? That's just the nature, the human nature, right, of jealousy. And it's just kind of a principle. If God raises you up, other people are going to want to take you down. And it's certainly what we see here in Daniel's life. But I love, that they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. Let me read that again. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. Let me ask you a question. Who would you like to be like? Who would you like to be like and why? I know this is a question we ask of kids. Who would you like to be like when you grow older? But I take this into context of all of us as we live our life. Who would you like to be like? Who are your heroes? Who are your mentors? What kind of person comes to mind? And now, imagine that the entire world, that every person lived like that person. Chances are the people who make this list, our top 5 of people that we would like to be like, aren't people that we would like to be like because of their accomplishments, right? Or major success, or the possessions that they have, or the fancy car that they drive, right? It's likely not those things. It's likely their character, their integrity. It's likely the choices that they have made, right? They are our heroes because of those things, and right, not the trite, not the shallow other things that oftentimes accompany, what we think of as successful people in life. And the reason this is important, because I think Daniel exhibits these kinds of behaviors, this kind of character, this kind of integrity. He's the kind of person that all of us deep down would like to be like. And he's the kind of person that if we could all be like that, the world would be such a better place. And so it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to endeavor to be like this person, who's so faithful, integrative, and filled with character. Because this is the kind of people that others are going to be inspired by. And this is the kind of person that others are going to be inspired by. This is the kind of person that is going to make the world a better place. That's what we should endeavor to become. So who is Daniel? It says he was faithful, he was always responsible, and completely trustworthy. This is the legacy of Daniel. This is true of him when he was 14. He refused to eat the king's food, and this was his legacy now in his later years of life. And as I mentioned, Daniel is now an older man, and yet this reputation has followed him. He's faithful. Faithfulness, here's a quick definition for you that I grabbed. Faithfulness is the concept of unfailingly remaining loyal to someone or something and putting that loyalty into consistent practice regardless of extenuating circumstances. Okay, so faithful even when it costs him. That's who Daniel was. He was responsible. He was always responsible. That definition is a person who is able to be trusted to do what is right or to do things that are expected or required. Doing right, even when it costs him. That's who Daniel was. The third thing, trustworthy. The definition, able to be relied upon as honest and truthful, even when it costs him. That's who Daniel was. We're seeing a pattern here. You don't know if you are faithful. You don't know if you are responsible or trustworthy until it costs you something to be it, until you are tested. And we see over and over and over in Daniel's life that he is tested, and he passes the test every time. Verse 6. So the administrators, he was faithful, always responsible, completely trustworthy. So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, "Long live King Darius. We are all in agreement we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Okay, so another principle, when people start blowing smoke at you, they're trying to manipulate you. Maybe King Darius should have been onto this. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. All right, let's make this law. Let's make this rule. They're starting to set their trap for Daniel. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so it cannot be changed. All right, an official law, because that's how important this law is, right? I mean, that's how important you are, so the law should reflect that. So, make it so that we cannot change this law, an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. So King Darius signed the law. Verse 10, when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home, knelt down as usual in his upstairs room with his windows open towards Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. And then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. So they went straight to the king and reminded him about this, about his law. Now, your first thoughts might be, and I know these were my first thoughts, why would the king who loved Daniel so much, at least appreciated and respected Daniel so much, not see through this deception and the ridiculousness of this suggestion? And the answer to that is simply this. Kings were often, or people in positions of power, are susceptible to pride. And when you butter them up, and when you tell them about how great they are, or how great they become, or what they deserve, they oftentimes are very easily manipulated, and King Darius here is no exception. And so he's easily manipulated into making this decision that will serve the greatness of his legacy, or so he thinks. And that is exactly what these administrators are after, and exactly what they have done. So they've trapped Daniel and they've trapped the king in this scheme, which is dangerous for them. But back to Daniel. And this has to do with his integrity. What do you do when you are certain doing the right thing will cost you? What do you do when you are certain that doing the right thing will cost you? I think that's the definition for integrity. The answer to this question is, well, it depends entirely on what is most important to you. How committed are you, right, to that person or to that thing? In these moments in life, when we are aware of something that is going to cost us or is a risk to us, we discover what or who we are most committed to. Right? It's in that test that our integrity is uncovered, whether or not it is intact, whether or not it is strong, whether or not it's secure. We discover whether or not we are faithful, whether or not we are responsible, whether or not we are integrous, or is that integrity just disposable, just a thing to throw away the minute that the heat is turned up. Right? It's easy to look at the outcomes of decisions and know if we've won. Right? We can look and say, oh, I made this decision and it turned out well for me, right? And, a ways down the road, we can look and say, hey, look, that was the right decision, or at least we could think that was the right decision. But the more important thing to consider, the greater win in any situation is this, that you would know before the outcome whether or not what you have done is right. And what I mean by this is you don't even know if you are a person of faith or not until you are tested. It's when you are tested that you know that you are being shaped by and becoming the person that God has called you to be. It's the ultimate litmus test. When we are tested, that's when we know whether or not we are faithfully following in the way that God has called us to live our lives. I love this passage from the Proverbs in Proverbs 11, verse 3. It says, the integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous will destroy them. When Daniel was 14, he easily could have just pretended to eat the king's food like everybody else, and slip it to the dogs under the table, or, pour the wine into somebody else's glass and go on eating the food that he was required to eat according to the Levitical law, right? He could have done that, right? But Daniel had integrity and he was completely truthful. And he went to the king's attendant and he said, hey, listen, I've got to tell you, I've made this decision. I can't eat this food. He made a stand and he made it a principle, and his integrity guided him through that. And just as in that time, this time he could have prayed silently. That's what I would have done, right? Oh, praying is going to get me put to death? Okay, well, I could solve that, communicate with God through the heart anyways. So, I could just pray in my mind, just pray in a way that nobody else can recognize that I'm praying, right? That ought to be, a solution to this particular difficult scenario that Dan was in. But no, Daniel resolved to do what he had always done, it says, and that he prayed 3 times a day with his windows open towards Jerusalem. This was his act of faithfulness. It was something that was important to him, something that he had determined that God had called him to do, and a person that God had called him to be. He does what he's always done. And here's why. He's aware by now, at this point in his life, and again, he's in the later years of his life, that God is the one who determines the outcomes. God is the one who determines the outcomes. Why? Because he is locked into this undeterring way of living his life. I live my life faithful to God, and God is the one who determines the outcomes. That's the recipe for success in Daniel's life. And so the story goes on in verse 16. So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested, thrown into the den of lions. And the king said to him, may your God, who you serve so faithfully, right? Even the king was aware of Daniel's faithfulness to his God. May he rescue you. A stone was placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his own royal seal and the seals of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and couldn't sleep at all that night. The king was horribly distressed over this terrible decision that he had made, right? Maybe for the first time realizing how he was even not in control of certain outcomes in his own kingdom. But very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out to the lion's den. And when he got there, he called out in anguish, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve so faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions? And so you see the stress of the king here in this particular situation. And Daniel answers him, verse 21, long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me, for I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty. And the king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den, and not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his God. Even King Darius knew of the faithfulness of Daniel. May the God who you so faithfully serve. Daniel knew what he was about and who he trusted in above and beyond anything else. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the story, this is a story in which we look at the outcome and we say to ourselves, okay, see, Daniel made the right choice and look what happened. God rescued him. God delivered him. But one of the things I want to drill home in this message this morning is just simply this, that the real win, the real key principle found in this story is that before Daniel knew the outcome, he made the right choice. He did the right thing. And that's the win in this story. That's the principle that you and I need to carry with us. It's the same principle that we find in the story previous to this, of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they're thrown into the fiery furnace as a result of not bowing down to Nebuchadnezzar's statue. And in that, even in their response to Nebuchadnezzar, the truth of the way they felt about things was revealed. They said, we believe that our God will rescue us, but even if he does not, there is one God, and we are going to worship him and serve him faithfully, right? Even if the outcome does not go our way, right? Even if this isn't the right choice in regards to our self-preservation, we are still committed to doing the right thing. And that's the key principle. Daniel's primary concern, and get this, and this is something you can write down, his primary concern was not the outcome of his decision. He wasn't trying to manipulate and predict, if I do this, then this is going to happen. If I do this, then that is going to happen. He was unwavering. He was completely sold out and committed to do this. His primary concern was doing the right thing. Doing the right thing. It wasn't the outcome that he was interested in manipulating. His primary concern was his integrity. I'm going to do what is right in this situation. And that is where his faith came in. Doing the right thing, doing what God wanted him to do, was the win in this scenario for Daniel. Daniel trusted the outcome to God because time and time again, he had walked with God through various scenarios and he had learned that God was trustworthy. And here's the genius of this. When we sacrifice our integrity, is often because we are trying to control or manipulate the outcome of a situation. But the reason the proverb says it's the crookedness of the treacherous that will destroy them is that not only do they sacrifice their integrity, but the wicked, the unintegrous, cannot even control outcomes. Even when we're trying to manipulate things to work out well on our behalf, we aren't in control. We can't determine what the outcome is going to be. And so we may as well keep our integrity intact and do the right thing and entrust ourselves to the one who does control outcomes, is the principle behind what Daniel is accomplishing here in this story. And we do this all the time. We sacrifice our integrity in order to hope for an outcome that may or may not result. Think about these various scenarios. Cut corners at work, just this once. I'll cut corners here, I'll cut corners there. Oh, I'll do it again. I'll do it a second time to get the results that I want, right? But if I do it a third time, right, and I get caught, right, not only may it cost me my job, it may cost me my career. Why? Because I cannot control the outcomes. I cannot control the outcomes. And so now I've sacrificed my integrity and I've sacrificed my future, and I didn't get the result that I was hoping for ultimately. How about this scenario? I'll sleep with him or I'll sleep with her and I'll fast forward this intimacy process because I'm so desperate for a relationship. But you compromise your character and you skip over a million warning signs that you may have come across if you built that relationship the hard way and the right way through developing intimacy in relationship. But now you are committed and you've sealed that relationship with a sexual commitment. And all of a sudden, if things don't work out, they really, really don't work out. And it hurts you and it hurts that person that you're with because you've compromised your character. You've compromised your integrity. You tell one lie because the truth would hurt that person. And you knew it would hurt that person. And so you tell a lie. And then you tell another lie to cover up for the lie you just told. Right? And now you've got this grand scheme of things and you don't even know what the truth is anymore. Right? You're so wrapped up into this lie and you have become a pathological liar as a result. And you can't even trust yourself, much less entrust somebody else entrust anything with you. And it's completely marred your reputation. And you're twisted and torn up inside. And this is what happens over and over and over again as we try to manipulate and control outcomes that we are not in control of in the first place. And we compromise our character and we don't end up with either result. We don't end up with good integrity We don't end up with our integrity intact, and we don't end up with the outcomes that we were hoping for, right? And this is the great, sad story of so many wrecked lives, and a sad story that we see, unfortunately, over and over and over again in life. And we do all these things, and we compromise our character. And why? Because we think we can control the outcome. But Daniel, in his wisdom, had the experience to know better. I can't control the outcome. I can only control what it is that I do. I can only control doing the right thing, and I'm going to do what is right. Daniel had witnessed a king named Nebuchadnezzar who had thought he controlled outcomes, and he was a king no longer. He was humbled. He's long since died. He now is a victim, or a potential victim, to two jealous coworkers and another king who all think that they control outcomes. But Daniel knows. Daniel's the only person in this story who knows there is only one who controls the outcome. And I'm going to do what is right by him. I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to be trustworthy. And I'm going to trust the outcome to my God, as I have always done. Now, what about you? What about you? What situation, what decision, what temptation are you facing in which you are tempted to think that you can control things? You can manipulate things. If you just compromise right here, right? If you just kind of wiggle around this particular issue of character or integrity, what makes you think that you know what is best in this situation? That you know what needs to be done? That you know what needs to happen in order to gain the outcome that you are so desperate to gain? I think it's something that we all have to carefully consider and pre-decide before we get there what we are going to do. Deep down, our integrity compels us. Our character compels us. We know what we ought to do. We know what God has called us to do. And so let's commit. Let's resolve ourselves as Daniel did. And we saw that in the first week. He resolved himself that he would not defile himself by eating the king's food. Right? Well, let's resolve ourselves to do what is right, regardless of what the outcome will be. And let's leave into God's capable hands our future, whatever results, whatever outcomes may be. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for these themes that come through in the life of Daniel, the inspiration that he is to all of us as we read this story and as we consider the implications of all these decisions that he made in his life. And God, I just pray that as I mentioned, Lord, when we think of the people that we want to be, the most inspiring people that we've experienced and seen and been blessed to know in our lives, God, we want to be those kind of people. And those kind of people are integritous, filled with strong character, and they do the right thing, regardless of the circumstances. And God, I pray that we would have that courage. I pray that we would have that determination. And so, God, I pray that this would be a story that inspires us, whatever situations and circumstances we may be facing. And we thank you for this inspiration in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Well, again, it's so great to have you join us this morning. And we want to continue to ask that you be faithful in giving to the work that God is doing through our church. And you can give through a couple of different ways. Through our church app. If you've downloaded the Westside Church app, it's available on the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Just search Westside Church Seattle. You can set up giving through the app. Also on our website, westsidechurch.com/give. We're so grateful for every gift that is received. Thank you for your faithfulness and generosity in giving. There is a blessing in that, and just believing God will bless you. That's another one of these principles of doing the right thing and entrusting the results to our Heavenly Father. And so we know that generosity is one of those things that we want to be about. And so let's commit to that. So thank you for all of your giving and your faithfulness in giving. Well, God bless you. We can continue next week with our final message in this series, a message that you're not going to want to miss. Important message on prayer and the principles behind it. And we'll take a look at that next week. So God bless everybody. We'll see you next time.